Welcome, welcome, everyone. This is another edition of Success Talk, conversations with people who have accomplished a lot in life, but who these conversations are designed to let you know that it was not an easy run, that they got where they got by working hard, that each of them had obstacles and challenges just like you, but they hung in there and they made it happen. Each one of them had a David and Goliath moment at some point in their lives. And so the purpose of these talks is to let you know that no matter what you're faced with, that if you hang in there, use your mind, use the principles of success, you can get through it and have a great victory. So today we have my good friend Quentin Moses from Atlanta, GA. Hey, Quentin, thanks for coming.
Oh, Dr. Harris, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for writing the 12 Universal Laws of Success.
Well, I tell you, Quentin, that was one of those gifts. I take credit for it, but when I actually wrote the book in Cleveland, and what I concluded was I was a conduit for the words to come through.
Mm.
You know, I've sometimes read sections of the book and I say, I don't remember writing that. You know, Sandra graduated from A&T, and they had a big alumni function here. And we were every year they had an annual breakfast. And so the speaker was one of the professors there. And so she started quoting from a book. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, boy, that's some good stuff, you know? And afterwards, we came up and we were meeting one another, and she met me, she said, Harris, she said, are you Herbert Harris? I said, yeah. She said that one of the early editions of this book was called The 12 Golden Rules.
Wow.
Yeah, after the initial printing, a big time publisher, Marlowe in New York, contacted me and they said, listen, we'd like to publish the book. And I had an agent and she thought it was a good idea, but it's something about publishers. They don't like to use the same name. And so they changed the name from the 12 Universal Laws of Success to the Golden Rules for Achieving Success.
Wow. Okay.
And that's the only version that has my picture on it. You know,
Wow.
yeah, at that time, and George Frazier, you know, George from,
Yes.
George wrote the cover blurb for me.
Wow.
And so the lady, she stopped in the middle. She said, wait a minute, hold on. She reached in her bag and she had the copy of the book. And she looked at me and I had hair.
Right.
She looked at me and she said, that's you. And we became good friends and, you know, it just went on. So it was really a labor of love based on many years of work and being attentive to, you know, to the spirit, to the flow.
Yes. Yes.
Now, Quentin, you have an interesting background, man. Maybe tell a little about your background, where you're from, and those early years, how you got to be the Quentin that we know right now.
Okay. Well, born and raised in Atlantic City, New Jersey, before the casinos and all that stuff. And technically, Atlantic City is below the Mason-Dixon line. So when I was growing up, you know, everything was black. Everybody lived on my neighborhood, my relatives, everybody lived on the same block. I walked one block over, and the elementary school was there, and that was all black. And so, you know, if you messed up, you know, the teachers smacked you upside the head. And by the time you got home, even without the internet, your mom knew and she smacked you upside the head. So, you know, grew up there. And, you know, it's listening to your podcast, which are just phenomenal. I really enjoy them. You know, you realize we're standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. So I think about that. And I think about how my teachers and the principal of elementary school, you know, taught us to be competitive, taught us education was really important. And so after, I don't know what it's like nowadays, but you know, elementary school was from kindergarten to sixth grade. And in seventh and eighth grade, which was junior high school, that's when we first started going to school with white people,
Mm.
And in Atlantic City, most of those white people were Jewish people. And, so I just like to compete, it's like, I don't care what color you are, whatever. But it's interesting because people still remember. I went to my 50th high school reunion a few years back, and people were telling me what we were talking about in seventh grade, eighth grade, because that's when we were in junior high school when uh, um, Kennedy was shot, Dr. King was shot. So for all of us being together in an integrated environment for the first time and having those monumental things take place, it stuck in a lot of people's minds. And so um, junior high school, then went to high school, and there was a big high school in Atlantic City. About
Mhm.
4,000 kids were there, and they came from all over. So then we saw everybody else. And like you like music. I play guitar, taught myself to play guitar. And then we had a band, in freshman year, high school, actually all through. And we were from the public school, the Catholic school, so they were black and white.
Mhm.
So we played, you know, the public high school events. We
Yes.
played Bas Mitzvahs.
Yeah.
We played the Catholic ones. So we played everything from
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix to, Blood, Sweat, and
Yeah.
Tears to
Wow.
Sam and Dave. And so,
Yeah.
and we would practice at my friend's
Yeah.
house on the
Yeah.
weekends, which kept us out of trouble.
Well, Quentin,
And
Atlantic City, just to interrupt you for a minute, Atlantic City
yeah,
for me was where all of my uncles and aunts went to Atlantic City to work in the for the rich white people there.
yes.
And then Atlantic City, I think they had the Club Harlem.
Well, that block, the Club Harlem, down the street was Johnson's restaurant. Okay.
Yes.
Well, my aunt owned that. My aunt and uncle owned the Johnson's restaurant.
Wow.
And we, my grandmother had 11 brothers and sisters, and we're all from North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So all of my family's Aggies. And of course, being from North Carolina, you righteously know the difference between vinegar-based barbecue sauce. Because tomato-based barbecue sauce, like no, nobody does.
Yes. Yes.
So my family owns Scott's Barbecue, and so have always been entrepreneurs and had the Scott's and still have the restaurant down there in Goldsboro, on the coast.
Uh-huh.
So grew up there, when I was in high school, worked there waiting tables. So it was a very exciting time because the Club Harlem, I mean, my lord, in the front where you'd have a little drink, they'd have, Jimmy Smith and Kenny Burrell playing in the lounge, and then, Duke Ellington playing in the back. And then they would come in, and people would come in because I don't think we opened till 4 o'clock in the afternoon and stayed
Yeah.
open all night. So we got
Yeah.
a chance to meet them and experience them. And then in the summer, because it was all black, that one block, they'd have the pimp parade.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was a heck of an experience. And then that little block where we would practice was on one side. Diagonal was my aunt's house, my aunt and uncle, and he had the first black bar in Atlantic City.
Wow.
And yeah, Bill Mark's Tavern.
Uh-huh.
And then across the street, literally across the street, was Dr. Wilson, and I dated his daughter. I think I dated the whole family. They went to Hampton, he and his wife,
Uh-huh.
graduated, and couldn't get into medical school in United States. So he went to France, and he had to learn French and go to medical school at the same time.
Wow.
So needless to say, this whole family were mentors to me. I'm like, oh my God, if you can do that, I can do anything.
Yes.
And so always excelled, worked ever since junior high school, actually worked in a clothing store called the University Shop. One of my classmates from high school, and they used to dress all the prep kids, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So again, not knowing, I learned how to dress preppy because of the job. And
Yeah.
I'm like, so when I got to, ended up going to Wall Street and knew how to dress for success, didn't realize how I'd learned that. So
Yeah.
everything kind of came. So went to
Yeah.
graduated, went to Rutgers University, Livingston College,
Hmm.
and back in those days it was very radical.
Yes.
Took a course called Black Revolutionary Drama with Sonia Sanchez,
Woo. Yes. Yes.
and ended up, going to, and I guess this is a good point to talk about how all these things build because I realized what was going on. So I got into med school in Newark, and um, that was the first time there was like a large black contingent,
Mm.
in the school. And when I went there, there was I was work uh, uh, I was going to the gym, going to this little gym, and these guys had a protein shake, kind of like an Amway, type of
Hmm.
shake. This was way before that
Yeah.
started. And I figure, well, I'm a student, I can drink these milkshakes. I don't have to pay for food twice a day.
Uh-huh.
But it was a direct marketing company that I know you're familiar with. That's why we
Yes.
originally met. And I felt good and I lost weight and things were working on. I went to so I started, it didn't cost much to get a distributorship. And I would go home like every weekend or every other weekend. And the people would see me. They're like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Signed up to be a distributor. I felt like a drug dealer. I was literally selling this stuff out of the trunk of my car when I would drive up. But Dr. Harris, what happened was people were losing weight and their blood pressure was going down and all this stuff. So I went to my professors. I said, guys, we need to be focusing on exercise and diet. And of course, New Jersey's the home of the pharmaceutical company. They told me, they said, you're hallucinating. I was 21. I'm like, y'all are crazy. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I'm making money and doing this. So I quit and I did this full time for several years. And you understand direct marketing. This company was called Seaforth Labs, and
Uh-huh.
it was the fastest growing direct marketing company in history. It went from
Yes.
like $100,000 to 100 million in 18 months.
Wow.
And it was a phenomenal, but of course, the pharmaceutical companies were like, we can't have people getting healthy for $30 a month.
No.
So they created a product called liquid protein that you needed a prescription to buy, but it started killing
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that vibe went around. I know you remember it. The vibe
Yeah.
went out and it wiped out the business. But
Yeah.
unbeknownst to me, and again, this is why, you know, believing in yourself, everything you talk about, believing in yourself, having a positive attitude. So I got a cold call. I got a call from a recruiter. And because my business was wiped out, right? But
Uh-huh.
he said, have you ever thought about being a stockbroker? And I'm like, come on, I'm like, how? What's that? He said, well, you call up rich people,
Uh-huh.
and they send you money. You dress up, they send you money, and you make money. I'm like, sounds good to me.
Sounds like a
Well,
plan.
sounds like a plan. I'm on board.
Uh-huh.
So that's how I got recruited. I got recruited to Merrill Lynch. That's when I started in
Uh-huh.
1980. And to put it in perspective, the Dow Jones was 800.
Right.
Now we're at
Right. Yeah.
30,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's what I didn't know. I did not know that two black women sued Merrill Lynch because they didn't hire enough women. And Merrill Lynch went out and said, okay, we're going to hire blacks and women and other folks so we don't get sued. And then once we got in there, just like anything else, they figured, well, you're just as good or bad as other people.
Yeah.
And again, that being Quentin, Accelerate was always in the top 20% and producing. So I started at Merrill, and then I kept getting recruited. So I got recruited to Lehman Brothers, the famous
Uh-huh.
Lehman Brothers. And Lehman, we learned how to sell to very rich people.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't realize those kind of wealthy people existed. But
Yes.
back in those days, which was 30 years ago, you needed a minimum of $10,000 per investment, and you needed to have 5 brokers.
Wow.
So very sophisticated. You know what I'm talking. Very
Yeah.
sophisticated people. So we get up in the morning, cold call. All the papers were read at 7 a.m. Cold call from the East Coast to the West Coast for 12 hours.
Yeah.
$100 a day,
Uh-huh.
20 contacts, 5 leads, go back a week later, pitch those 5 leads. And all this was happening by the telephone. So learn that process, everything you're talking about, wrote the goals down and things like that. And, things that I wanted, again, getting back to your universal laws of success, write stuff down.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I want a BMW.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go to the BMW place and drive the thing around and
Yeah.
cut out the pictures and I
Yeah.
put it in my closet so I'd wake them up in the morning and see it. 6 months later, I had me a
Yeah.
BMW. So everything, you know, and you got to act. And there was no always stay positive,
Yeah. Yeah.
because uh, I didn't even know all that happened until years later to get me, to that point.
Well,
And then, mhm,
Quentin, as you were talking, your experience in Atlantic City, having that pride, that Black community type of um, support, you know, and accountability, you know.
yes, oh, big time.
Yeah, you know, my mother's thing, if somebody had to chastise me, a neighbor, then she gave me a whipping first before she even heard the story. I'm like, why are you doing that, Mom? She said, now I'm whipping you because she had to whip you.
you know,
Yeah. But that seemed to prepare you because a lot of times people from our community will come up and not be able to find it difficult to operate, let's just say, in a white world. And sales is one of those
mm,
areas that really challenges your belief in yourself. Many people can't deal with rejection. When you're cold calling, the law of numbers, what they used to call it, sin lower, safety in numbers, law of action,
yes,
law of averages? Yeah.
yes, a lot of averages.
And so those brokerage firms were based on, if you call enough people consistently over a period of time, you're going to get some yeses and you're going to get some no's, but the no's just lead you to a yes. And that's a different mindset. Many folks who don't have that self-confidence, they take a no as a personal rejection of you and your family and your unborn children. But
Oh,
you know,
well, I
so,
think
mhm,
what you're talking about, what we called it was the Lehman method. And the
mhm,
Lehman, so I lived the Lehman method. The number one stockbroker in America was in our office. Okay. We were the top producers. No one was even close. So here was the Lehman method. We knew because we had qualified leads. In other words, if you were a widow or an orphan and maybe you got a big life insurance policy, it didn't matter. We wouldn't talk to you. You
mhm,
had to have 5 different, you were sophisticated.
yeah,
So we knew that if we made 100 dials, we get 20 people on the phone who would just talk to us. We give them our little spiel about what we did. We're leaving. We got some good ideas. And 5 of them would say, hey, call me back. And
mhm,
we knew if we called them back and pitched all of them, we would get one. So
that's
our
right.
attitude was like every time we got a rejection, we were closer to getting that referral.
Yes,
So it
yes,
became a positive. And Doc, we had 20, 30 people just standing in the room calling. And when they got somebody on the phone, they would throw it to us. We work like that. So
yes,
12-hour days, were nothing, and we got used to that. And it's funny you should say that about Black people, and sales and white people, because my cousin, who I grew up with, she was a few years, 7 years older than me, and she lived across the street. About 8 years ago, I lost my wife, married very happily for 30 years. And when I had her funeral service, I had people come in and just talk, about what she was to them. And she said, I knew Quentin before he was born because I'd listened to him in his mother's stomach and stuff like that. But after my wife died and I was kind of dating and stuff like that, she pulled me to the side and she said, no, it's okay if you date white women. And I said, well, why would I want to do that?
mhm,
She said, well, because you get along so well with white people. But my mother was black
Hmm.
and all of y'all are, but it was really interesting as a concept because I never looked at it as anybody being black or white. It's like trying to do the best thing,
Hmm.
everybody, which is why getting back to, unity, the spiritual laws are what's happening. Because as I get older, I realize how important those spiritual laws are because the Holy Spirit, we're all one.
Hmm.
We're
Yeah,
all one.
yeah,
And
yeah,
karma's real.
yeah.
Yeah.
Karma's real. Karma, I tell you. Say karma's like gravity. Whether you believe it or not, it's gonna get you.
That's
Okay.
right. Try
Yeah.
jumping out that plane with no parachute.
Yeah. Well, I find that sales, I know even as a network marketer, my
Yes.
organizations tend to be more white or other than black.
Yes.
And as a sales trainer, I find that so many black people find it difficult to accept rejection. If you look at sales, I mean, you look at your top salespeople, it's rare. You don't find that many really. When you find one, he's a bad motor scooter, she's a bad motor
Exactly.
scooter.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Because so many times people will feel that rejection of the plan or rejection of the system is a personal rejection. And nobody likes that. Nobody likes that. And so you have that run away from it. But when you look at your background, you grew up in New Jersey. You had see, now you went to school with black people, and then you went to school with white people. So you were able to really see each other as human beings
Yes.
and operate, and
Yes.
yeah, that's a big piece because when I went to college and I went to Columbia, I came
Hmm.
straight from the segregated South. And
Wow.
so I had never attended. The only time I ever set foot on the campus of the local high school, which was white, was to take the college boards. And me and another lady were the first black students to take the college boards.
Oh my Lord.
And see, in the black community, we had our own college boards. We had a separate set of examinations called the merit exams. And that's
Really?
what the black kids took. In the South, most of the black kids were not allowed to take the college boards because the schools were segregated and they didn't do the college boards in the black schools.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when I came to Columbia, I went to Columbia in 1960
Hmm.
and I talked to the fellow who was interviewing me and I said, well, I had never had a conversation with a white person until I got to New York in school, in college.
Wow.
And so it was a tough reality for me. I had to really learn how to associate, how to get together. And at Columbia, we didn't have enough black folks to play a game of cards. We had in
Oh.
my class out of 700, somebody said, Herb, you never played cards. I'm like, I didn't have anybody to play with because even though we were in New York, when we went to Columbia, there were 725 or so freshmen, only 5 black, and out of that, only 2 of us actually graduated. Okay. And
Wow.
the others got kind of, left within the first year or two.
Yeah.
And so, although we were there, we never fully felt integrated into the system. You know. Now, one of the guys coming out of that, Garland Woods.
Oh.
Okay. Well, Garland was one of my classmates.
Oh my.
Garland was a couple years behind me at Columbia. Garland had come from Texas and basically had the same experience that I had. But when he came to Columbia, we were a few years ahead of him. And so he came into a different environment. So in his class, you had more blacks than in my class.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And Garland got into sales. He started with which company? He wasn't with Lehman Brothers. He was with one of the other major brokerage firms.
Okay.
But he started out, he was the only one of us that went into the sales, the security industry, and his specialty was healthcare financing. He really built that up. Goldman Sachs. That's what he.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
Yeah,
Garland.
yeah, Goldman Sachs, and he was one of the first black partners in Goldman Sachs. But of
Yep.
all of our groups, he was the only one that had that thick skin that to be able to operate on that level. Wow. So
Yeah.
you came along, man, in an area and in an era that um so that transitional era between the segregated era where a black man was a novelty to the era of a black man being a an asset. In other words, as you said at your company, as long as you produced results, then you got
You
you
got with it. And I
you
think the
got the
kind of
prize. Yeah.
cool thing was also at that period of time being in New York and just socializing with other black people, because at that time, you talk about Garland, you had black traders at Solomon Brothers, you had partners in major law firms. So, these were our content. We were hanging out with them.
Yes. Yes.
And the thing that keeps coming to mind is Melvin Van Peebles, who passed, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Met Melvin at a party,
Yeah.
you know, and he took me up to his apartment. He said, "Oh, he found out where to go on Wall Street. He wanted to talk more, and I wanted to talk about movies and stuff." He told me how he made, Sweet Back and financed that. But a couple of years later, I saw him, and he's going down the street. He bought a seat on the Amex Options Exchange and took me to a seat. So you all of these connections, but they were just folks we were hanging out with. So, and they all were strong-willed. They were successful in what they were doing, be them actresses or actors or writers or traders or investment bankers or whatever.
Yeah.
So New York was great.
But as you move through your life, do you find were there any like major obstacles? A lot of people when they have that David and Goliath moment, a lot of times Goliath wins. you
Mm.
know, did you ever have like that that David and Goliath moment? Maybe one or two of them where you were really up against a serious obstacle and where whatever you had, Goliath, David had the stones and the slingshot, the ability to
Uh,
use it, you know, where you came to that type of situation where you were
oh,
confronted with that challenge.
yeah, 1987. The great stock market crash. Because what happens is 1987, like you had to live there. If you were waiting tables in Idaho, you didn't know 1987 happened. But if you were in New York in finance, it was happening. So the stock market was going up, and when the market crashed, in '87, we'll talk about what it was devastating. So when you think about how we made money, we were selling stocks. And if you were a client, you could love Quentin, but if I lost half your money, you're probably not going to be excited about giving me more money. You say, we go out to dinner, but I'm not sending you any more money. So the market crash, that was part of it, but also a lot of people were being hit because if your portfolio went down, that was one thing. But a big part of what we did was taking companies public. Those are called initial offerings. So now you have a lot of angel investors, da 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 da. But in those days, that's where most of the money was raised. So in October 1987, for the following year, Dr. Harris, there were no initial public offerings,
Mm.
which means you had no inventory. It's like if you had no pro tandem for a year,
Mm-hmm.
what would happen to your business?
Yeah.
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 And the whole thing shut down. So then all of a sudden, because you're young, you're like, okay, I can afford this Porsche. Okay, I can afford this house with 10 rooms. And you were doing that. You were doing what you were doing, but you never saw this hitting. And when that thing hit, it was tough, man. I had to regroup. I'm like, I can't afford this house anymore. I had to declare bankruptcy. Had to do stuff to survive, but always being positive. Like, well, I'm going to get on the other side of this. It's just because I always have, you know, and I've always been positive. But that was something because it just halted. And then basically the whole world I was in, because most of these folks were involved with Wall Street, it hit them too. So everybody was kind of there, you know, at the same time. And coming out on the other side, um, it turned out to be incredible because the markets were low. So when it turned,
Mm-hmm.
and we used the same thing again to get clients and buy, we were buying low. You know, you make money by buying low and selling high. A lot of people never came back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people left the industry. A lot of people, you know, and I see this today, you know, they committed suicide.
Mm.
You know, and again, if you would focus on the external, because I think in talking to you now, I realize the way I was raised, it was like, okay, you have faith in yourself because you know you have faith in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it, you got to go inside to find reality. Reality is
Mm.
not outside. So if you're looking at the stock market or looking at the news or something, that's not real. That's
Mm-hmm.
not real, and that's your focus. It's like,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So that was probably the toughest time because I didn't have a reference, which is why today, with all the craziness that's going on, I've never been more optimistic in my life.
Mm. Yeah.
Because as you talk about it, infinite possibilities.
Yes.
And people, like a lot of the people, you know, that listen to you every day, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they wouldn't allow those people to come into a boardroom in New York
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
pitch an idea.
Yeah.
And now people are coming over and say, can we invest in your operation? Can we help? Because if you're smart and got something going on and it makes sense financially,
Mhm.
then
Yes.
you can sell stuff all over the world and never leave your house.
That's right. That's right. Wow. Well, that's a good. And now you said something interesting. You change sides. You change your perspective. So same reality, but a new mindset.
Exactly.
Mm. Wow.
Brand new mindset. You know,
Yeah.
you just have to look at that situation because then you go back and go, because you're young, you know. And I was like, well, I don't need, you know, a 10,000 square foot house, you
Mm-hmm.
know, not now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And from this perspective, it's like, well, I can buy one, but why do I want one? Like, what's important to me in my life right now? And
Right.
I tell people
Right.
all the time, because well, you know me, I like to hike. So, you know, hanging out with these folks that are 40 and 50 years old, I'm like, hey guys, the important thing is your health.
Yes.
Because I know a whole bunch of dead rich people,
Yes.
you know, but
Yes.
to be blessed enough to be able to hike or yoga or whatever,
Yes.
you know, and enjoy this wonderful planet, enjoy the wonderful fruits of our labors and friends and family. I mean, that's everything.
Wow. Now, as you talk, I keep thinking, when you were coming through that period, was there someone, this old story they talk about Las Vegas and how a guy had like mortgaged his house and he came to
Mm.
Vegas. He thought he had the perfect scheme and he bets and he loses everything. I mean, he's like literally penniless, right?
Hmm.
And he's got to go to the bathroom and he's like the bathrooms in Vegas, you got to pay to go to the bathroom. So he couldn't even go to the
Yes,
bathroom.
yes.
And so finally somebody came and let him open the door for him so he could go to the bathroom. And he goes to the bathroom, he comes out, and there's a fella standing out the fella, and the guy telling him bet so and so, such and such, 17 red or something. And he goes and bingo, he hits, man, the money's coming. And said, man, I bet you want to thank that guy that told you to bet 17 red. And he said, no, I want to thank the guy that opened the bathroom door. Okay. And so
I love it.
that's it. And so there's often that person or those people that help guide you through those periods. Did you have a person, and probably at different points in your life, you have different people who help you?
Oh well, the Dr. Wilson, the one from high school, because she was just, I'm like, wow, if you can go to med school and learn French at the same time, that's a huge motivation. Oh gosh, there's been so many people. Uh, well, when I think about 87 and the ramifications of that, well, even Wall Street. So I guess like around 98, late, yeah, 98, 99 was when there was two World Trade Center bombings. And the first one that happened, we were out of the country. And but the second, oops,
It's buffering a minute.
oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know why it does that, but
Ooh, okay, that's very interesting. Well, folks, the internet has spoken, and let's see if we can get Quentin back because he was sharing some really powerful stuff with us. There we come. All right, we're coming right back in.
got the mic on. I'm just trying to
Okay,
get the,
I can hear you. Uh-huh.
yeah, because it's when I'm clicking to start the video, I'm clicking it, but it won't. I don't know why Zoom does this sometimes. Um,
I think the internet has ears.
yeah. Like, let's not find out too much about this.
Yeah, say
So,
you get ready to lay down stuff a little bit too heavy. Like, nah, we don't want to tell that secret.
well, I'm sure it's going to click on it a second.
Yeah, it'll
Because,
come. It's buffering. I really think that,
oh, there we go.
yeah, that the
Okay, there we
internet
go.
may be at
So,
capacity. You were sharing.
so you made me, yeah, yeah, and
Mhm,
but it made me think about that time because what was interesting, we were in Florida,
mhm,
and at the time when I left, Wall Street, um, I'm like, well, what happened then was I was looking at we were living in downtown Manhattan. It was gorgeous. It was everything, and I looked out the window, and I looked at my wife, and I said, "We're going to leave." It was from the gut,
mhm.
and I said, "This entire thing is going to blow up." And they're going to try and blame it on somebody black, and it's not going to be me.
Wow.
And I'm like, we're going. So in '99, we left, went down to South Florida, Boca Raton area, had a nice place on the beach, and I'm like, I'm out. I'm not doing this. This was '99, so kind of chill. And I've always liked art, and I won't go into too much detail there, but ended up being an art dealer, and being a went off again.
Yeah, just let it pause a minute. It will buffer. It's I think
Okay,
that the internet has a capacity that with so many people on it now, I mean, everything must have some type of capacity. Yeah.
so you can hear me okay, right?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So, why the video takes a little
Reverend Ike had a condo in Boca. That was one of his favorite spots.
Oh, Boca was beautiful and is
Hmm.
beautiful until you live through a hurricane. Then you'd be like, no.
Hmm.
Well, you
Yeah.
know hurricanes. I don't have to tell you about hurricanes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, but what was interesting is, so got into the art business and got out of finance business. I don't want anything to do with that. And um, worked with some great artists and dealers. I was a docent at the Norton Museum down there in West Palm Beach, and actually know a lot about modern art. And so, but still hanging out with people and doing things, I noticed that real estate market. This was about 2000. Well, again, what was interesting was we left in 99 and 2001 was 2001.
Hmm.
But my gut was telling me something.
Hmm.
Okay. Nobody else was saying this. I'm like, we're going. I didn't know why.
Hmm.
And so got there. And then 2004, 2005, I would go out and I see all these people, and, real estate, they were buying real estate. And, there'd be like a beautician who'd have this house that's 8,000 square feet. And, they're just buying. And I said, well, let me tell you something that I know about markets. They either go up, they go down, they stay the same. So I said, if the markets stay the same, you're okay. The markets go up, they stay, you're okay. I said, well, what happens when real estate goes down? I got the answer all the time. Real estate never goes down.
Hmm. Yeah.
So what happened, Dr. Harris, was I looked at these CEOs, which were the collateralized debt obligations, and studied the structure. Only time in my life that I came close to wanting to leave the country. Because when I understood what was going on, and thank God most people in this country didn't understand what was going on, the economy and the entire financial system as we know it would have
Mm.
collapsed, like overnight.
Yeah.
Because you have to think, what in the world did George Bush see with that Obama saw that caused the bailout of the banks immediately?
Hmm.
That's what they saw.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
what they saw.
Yeah.
So, kind of at that time, I'm like, well, my mother-in-law was battling with cancer. So I said, let's go to Atlanta because it's too far to be away. And
Right.
so we came here, and I said, well, I always wanted to do something where I can contribute where a lot of people aren't in that space.
Hmm.
So with computers and stuff like that, I'm like, well, people can form small businesses, but what people don't know about is health insurance.
Right.
So I said, I'll do this. But again, I always look for people smarter than me. I
Hmm.
look for an acquisition.
Yes.
So what happened was Health Markets, which is a holding company, I'm an independent agent, they had just been purchased by three investment banks, Goldman
Uh-huh.
Sachs, Blackstone, and Credit Suisse for $2 billion.
Uh-huh.
Like these guys don't spend two to make three. They
Uh-huh.
spend two to make 10. So I just joined.
Uh-huh.
I went and got my license. I'm like, I know these guys are going to roll it out. And again, when I came here, I'm used to being in New York. It's a good old boy network. And I just sat down with the guy. I said, okay, listen to me. I said, you can't educate me. Don't talk to me. I will be a top producer. Just let me do what I do. And that's how I came in with health markets. And
Wow.
that all took off because it doesn't matter what markets do.
Hmm. Yeah.
Health is, and it's a good place to be because everybody needs it. And, you know,
Wow. Well,
yeah, so that was a good lesson.
Quentin, that's what Garland saw. Garland was, I remember when he talked about that. And it's very interesting. He got into that area, the health area, with because we were all out there in the summers trying to figure stuff out.
Yep,
And he went into selling um he went into pharmaceutical sales initially.
yep,
And the reason was because they gave you a car.
yep,
That's
yep.
it, you got a car. And so from that, he built on, excuse me.
Mhm.
From that, he built on, he connected up. I don't know if you remember, there was a fellow named Tony Welters.
Yeah,
Tony Welters had a company called Americare,
yeah.
which he was the first brother I knew that sold a company for 400 million to
Wow,
United Healthcare.
wow.
And so, and Tony and Garland, I think, kind of connected up some kind of way, because Tony helped bring in managed care into New York City, sort of funneling it through the union structure,
Ah,
because you had such a strong union structure. And then Tony was an aide to the senator from New York,
Monahan.
not Monahan, the other one.
Oh,
He was Javits, Jacob Javits.
yeah. Oh, Jacob. Oh my God.
Yeah, and
Wow.
like we talk about how people open the door for you. Jacob Javits was a senator from New York, a white man,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he helped set up Bed-Stuy restoration, because there were young black men and women who had visions, and he believed in them. And
Hmm.
so AmeriCare, AmeriChoice, AmeriCare was a company that managed healthcare, and Javits helped Tony Walters put that together. When he sold the
Ah,
whole package to United Healthcare, he was like executive vice president for many years, and that became the model for a lot of the healthcare stuff.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tony
the
Walters,
Javits Center.
the Javits Center. Yeah, well, those were some interesting days, but I think that the gist of this conversation we've been having today is one that spans generations, you know.
Yes.
And for our listeners, there are a lot of folks, you hear about, there are all kinds of struggles. Some people
Hmm.
say, I know I was with some people, and they were like, man, we were broke. And I said, well, no, I never had that struggle. Okay.
Mm.
But I had other struggles. And
Yes.
so it everybody's struggle is really dependent on where they are at that point in their lives. And what you shared is how to blend a lot of things, like your background, the knowledge, and how to be sensitive to see not just today, but to see down the road, to see the trends. And that's a unique gift, man. I tell you, man, that's you think that's a gift that's guided you all through the way, all through your life.
I never thought about it that way. They used to say the trend is your friend.
The trend is your friend, and it really helps for you to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Well, some people always get on. I like when you said I go to the other side. There's some people that always figure out where it's going to be. The great basketball player is the one who is going to be in the spot where the ball is going to be in the
yes.
next 2 seconds.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think that was one of Michael Jordan's gifts,
Hmm.
that he could know where the ball was going to be. And he used to have his sweet spots. He said one day, he said, 29 times I have been entrusted with the last shot, and I missed.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you remember that game when they were playing, I think the Phoenix Suns, the
Hmm.
seventh game, and it was like 1 second left, and Michael hit that shot. And I remember Charles Barkley laid down on the floor. Yeah, man, because that whole thing of being able to see it and then to go for it. So I tell you, we've gone a little over time, but this is very instructive, because when people hear how you were able to move on another level, between stock brokerage, number one, how to get that foundation in Atlantic City, you know. And
That's
Atlantic City has been very unique. There was a lady who had the banks in Atlantic City. She had a hair products company in Atlantic
oh
City.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
The
she,
first female millionaire.
yes, yes,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Right. Right.
yeah. And she had banks. I mean, amazing. So it's a unique thing about Atlantic City. And that whole, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna give you a tie-in. The Spalding family in 1898, after the insurrection in Wilmington, North Carolina,
Huh.
which is the only coup that's ever taken place in America. Then the one in January 6th was a failed attempt, but this was a coup that worked. Okay. And the last black congressman from North Carolina was George Henry White. And he was a part of the Spalding family. Okay. Out of Greensboro and Durham, part of the Spalding family. George Henry White left Congress in 1901, And there was not another black congressman from the state of North Carolina for 92 years. There was not a black man in Congress, period, for the next 27 years. And so when George Henry White left Congress, he moved to Philadelphia. And Manley, who was the publisher of the black newspaper that precipitated the insurrection of 1898, Manley actually went to Philadelphia to work with George White. And George White set up a town in New Jersey called Whitesboro.
Oh, I know Whitesboro, sure.
Well, that was the town he, as a black man, he bought the land out there, the tract, laid out the plat and everything. And a lot of the Spaldings, as a matter of fact, Stedman Graham grew up in that area. So a lot of the Spaldings who came from North Carolina ended up buying land. To this day, they live right there in Whitesboro, Cape May, and that whole area.
Oh, sure. That's just south of Atlantic City.
Yes. And so many of them came to that region, and very often to work for white people, for the rich white people along the beach there.
Yes.
And so many of the Spaldings, color is always an issue in this country. And so white people feel more comfortable with a light brown skinned Negro than with a black Negro.
Yep.
And so the Spaldings, who had their freedom since 1799, and many of them were mulattoes, and there was a lot of intermingling, and they were all very fair-skinned, straight hair, etc. And so they worked as domestics there in Atlantic City and that whole area.
Oh, yeah.
And so you had a strong economic basis, because I'm sure, and I got to research it, that the lady who, I think it was Acme Hair Products, or one of those, the black lady who was the multimillionaire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, out of Atlantic City, was connected up with Philadelphia. And I'm sure that she and George Henry White and Manley all connected up, because they had to do self-financing. Like white people weren't going to do a thing for them. Yeah. And that created an environment there of economics, that the Harlem Club could come out, that a lot of the things that happened in Atlantic City was built on that consciousness.
Well, the reason I'm laughing is because my uncle, who was my grandmother's brother, there were 11 children. And you'll appreciate this, because this was from North Carolina. And when my grandmother, who was the oldest, was born, her father owned all this acreage, and he was a veterinarian, which were more important than doctors in those days, because they take care of the animals, right? Well, when she was born, of course, her mother was a slave, on his plantation. His mother, her father, took my grandmother and had a knife and was going to kill her. She said to her son, "I don't want any nigger babies," and was about to stab my grandmother, and he shot his own mother in the leg and took her. Wow. And they had 11 more children.
Wow.
Right. So that's the kind of,
Now, what part of North Carolina were they in?
This was in Goldsboro.
Ooh, okay.
This was in Goldsboro. So so my uncle, her brother, owned the first black bar in Atlantic City. My dad worked there. That's where he met my mom and stuff like that. So his wife lived to be 100. She just died 2 years ago.
Wow.
And this little place was not far from the boardwalk. I mean, it'd been in the family for years and years and years. So Trump and the boys tried to come in and steal the land from her. He sued his butt. And they had to settle for $1.5 million.
Wow.
And she was 100. When I went to see her, she was as sharp as 100 as she was when I knew her at 30.
Wow.
It's great.
Amazing.
I mean, just amazing story.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story.
There's so many, so many interconnections. And that's why each person is so important. You never know. You never know who's watching you.
Exactly.
You never know who knows you. You never know who's going to open that door. And you never know who sees you as an example.
And I tell people all the time, they talk about brands. I'm like, you're your own brand.
Hmm.
Because when you talk about, I think about a deal we did when I was on Wall Street, and it was everybody does it nowadays, but they zap your eyes so you don't need glasses. But
Hmm.
we took public the first company that made the lasers that did that, right? So long story short, this stock uh, went from about $1.50 to 250 bucks.
Woo!
24 months.
Yes,
We won't go into the details,
yes,
but it did that, right? And this is what, 1983 or four, like back
yes,
then.
yeah, yeah.
And people, I still have people who know me who were invested in that back in the, and no matter what happened after that, they can say, "Oh, I remember
Yes,
that." Oh, I remember.
yes, yes. Wow.
And actually made connections because I've had some people who have contacted me from New York. They say, "You know so and so, and you know so
Uh-huh.
and so," and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, because I've always been honest. I couldn't
Yes.
make the market go up, but I've
Yeah.
always been honest, and people remember that, and that becomes the brand.
Wow. I tell you, Quentin, there's so many, just talking with you. I had an office on Wall Street, had a
I remember
Series
you
7
telling me.
license once, and
Yeah.
we're at 79 Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was one of those buildings that had all these little offices. This is like the financial counterpart of in Manhattan on 49th and Broadway. You had the Brill Building, which was all the
Yes.
little offices of the
Yes.
other musicians. And I tell you, it was such an exciting era. There was I mean, yeah, it was an era where if you worked hard, you were judged by your results. You know,
Exactly.
they didn't care. You could be chartreuse, you could be striped purple, but if you got results, you were in the deal.
And it's interesting because when you are coming from inside versus outside, then you rate and it's funny you should mention it because I was at an event last week and it was kind of angel investors and stuff like that. But I didn't realize that there was a company called ICE, International Intercontinental Exchanges, that owns like 15 exchanges that bought the New York Stock Exchange. I remember seeing that,
Yes,
but it didn't register, right?
yeah,
So the guy's there, he's on the podium and he's talking, and they automated Wall Street. They took Wall Street from writing stuff on paper to
yes,
automating it.
yes,
So, and I'm sitting here saying, this dude lives in Atlanta. Like, he's in Atlanta. So after the thing is over, he's like in really good shape. And he's talking about the importance of bonding and working with people and hard work and everything like that. And I just went up, I said, I just want to thank you because if it wasn't for you, I'd still be writing stuff on paper. And
yes,
you've changed my life.
yes.
So we start talking, and he likes to hike. I said, I don't know if it makes sense to you. I said, but I bond with hiking. He said, I love to hike. I just got back from 6 days in Colorado, and we're talking and talking and talking. I said, well, where do you hike around here? He said, oh, Bamboo Forest. I was like, I was just in Bamboo on Sunday. And so
Wow.
we get to this. So up there in Buckhead, I've never seen mansions as big. So yeah, so he lives there. But the interesting thing was is that we connected about hiking. He said, "Hey Q, man," he said, "give me your info. If you want to come to the New York Stock Exchange, I'll take you to look." And again, because we were just being authentic, and but if I was thinking ego or I'm trying to do business with, that never
Right,
would have happened. But
right.
so that's what I'm saying, and it continues to this day. That was just last week.
Yes, that's beautiful, and that's something I don't know how we're going to teach our young people because that's that intangible thing that your word is your bond. You know, people
Hmm.
often say, "Well, Doc, how do you know so many famous people?" Say, "Well, because number one, I respect them. Number two, they respect me. But number three, I protect them." You know, that relationship that we have is one of equals, of sitting and of enjoying. But we know that there are so many people around when it's like Stedman told me one day, I was interviewing Stedman Graham and we're good friends and we had the whole interview and he said something basically was implying that we had a whole interview and nobody asked him about Oprah.
Right, 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 right.
know, and so often when people see, this one, that one, the lady said, so she saw something on the internet with me and Les Brown, and she chats me down and she says, I gotta talk to Les. Can I have his number? I'm like, no.
No, are you crazy? No.
And that's what keeps those relationships viable, because they know that you respect whatever their talent is. They respect their time and their space. And just like people want to take pictures with you. I mean, people are so rude. Say, I'm having dinner. Do you
Right,
mind? I just
right,
want to get
right.
a picture for my kids. Then they find out that I'm not Sammy Davis Jr., like
Oh, that's right.
when I'm coming down, been to the museum on Fifth Avenue, the Metropolitan,
Yes.
and I'm walking down the street, and the lady walking with me is a tall blonde lady, and as a matter of fact, she was in real estate sales, and
Wow.
we're walking down the street. We stop at the corner, and this guy comes along with his family and the kids, and he said, "Oh my God!" And he has one of those little, the little disposable camera. This is how far back this was. And he says,
My
"Can I
Lord.
pay?" And the wife takes a picture with him, and he asked me to sign. They had like a little program. So I said, sure. So I signed Herbie Harris. Herbie Harris. He said, you're not Sammy Davis Jr.?
Oh, that's a riot.
I said, no. But he says, but you are famous, right? I said, yeah, I'm famous. He said, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, only in New York. Only in New York.
Only in New York, man.
Oh, God.
Well, I tell you, man, I'd like to sort of wrap up
Okay.
two things. One, I appreciate your comments on the book. And when we got to the book, I know a lot of people get it and sit up on the shelf, but I can see you like read it and just shared stuff. Is there any one point that stands out, or something? If somebody said, hey, can you recommend this book? What would you tell them?
Yes, undoubtedly. And understanding, because I think the big difference between the 12 Universal Laws of Success and Tony Robbins is that it's spiritual.
Mm,
It's spiritual. And once you realize it's spiritual, and once you realize we're all eternal, the rest just flows.
yeah. It's like we keep priming the universal pump. Man, yeah.
And you realize how people, even names, come, because there was a young lady who I run into who introduced me to these angel investors and people like that. Just sharp lady, and I just liked her, and I took her out to breakfast, and she's kind of connecting me with stuff. But her name is Maya. So I know you know what the Maya matrix is.
Yes, yes.
And I saw her last week, and I said, "Are you familiar with the Maya?" She said, "No, Quentin," because she's 31 or something.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "I'm going to tell you about." And then I realized her influence in knowing her, how it impacted my life, just as a result of reaching out and trying to help.
Mm,
And
wow.
she probably had a greater impact on my life than I
Yes.
had on hers.
Yeah.
Just it's all internal, and that's what stands out. It's spiritual, and it works on every level, and we have everything we need. You tell people that we have everything we need, but it's just you can make $2 million a year, but if you're living at three, you're in the hole for a million. So you just have to watch your budget.
I tell you, one of my greatest quotes I love, it says, when your outflow exceeds your income, your upkeep becomes your downfall.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I tell you, man, for a man who's accomplished so many things and been so many, you notice how the journey, when folks will listen to this broadcast, they're like, man, they went from New York, North Carolina, Atlanta, and the journey. If you look back on your life and you say, well, what was, of all the things you've accomplished, what would you say is your greatest victory, that thing that you're most proud of?
Hmm. The thing I'm most proud of is my wife and I were married for 30 years, and we found out a couple of years after we married that she was a diabetic. But as things progressed, she ended up having to go on dialysis. And I said, you know what, particularly being in this business, and you probably know people have had diabetes, it affects the hearing and sight and things. And I said, I am going to take you all of that. I'm not going to travel as much. I'm going to restrict what I do just to one county so I can take you to the doctors and take you there and do. And I was saying it, but as I was acting it, I realized how much the importance of love and the power of love.
Mhm.
And what was amazing was if I had to do what she was doing, I would have blown my brain. I mean, I'm just not that brave. But for
Mhm.
her, she was so giving of other people. And when she passed, the people she did dialysis with were saying things like, you know, your wife gave me her shoes, your wife gave me this. I mean, so that is a pinnacle because that kind of love, it's different because when you're young and you're partying and you have a good time, that's one kind of thing. But the tough times in life, particularly when it comes to health, you're kind of going through a spirit, you find out what that really is. And I think that's the thing.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I took care of my aunt for 17 years and I didn't plan to. But Quentin, there's something you learn when you care for another person, even even in their lowest point. Like there were times when you take care of people who they may be angry, they may say nasty things to you, but you love them in spite of all of that. When you said I think that might be one of my greatest accomplishments. When I came home, her brother had died. In the old days, for some reason, the kids were kind of kept together. Although her brother was a year
Yes.
and a half, they kept him out of school until she was old enough to go to school so they could go to school together.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so they always were very close. She never married. He married and became an attorney and whatnot. But
Oh,
when he died, it really, really impacted her. She never married. She and my mother were school teachers. They lived together, all their lives. And so when
wow.
after he died, I could almost see her withering up, you know. And
Wow.
I tried to be when you were talking about that change in your travel. I was living in Cleveland at the time, and I was coming here every 6 weeks, and I'd spend 2 weeks here and try to group all of her doctor's appointments and all that. But at some point, you just can't do that. It's people can't program when they need you.
Exactly
I'm
right.
only going to
They
need you
need
on
you.
the second week of the month. And so I made a decision to move here, but over that next so from that point for the next 17 years,
Hmm.
I saw that love bring her back to life. And I'm sure you've seen that, and I think that the love you have for a person that helps give them life.
Exactly. Exactly. And realizing that that's the potential in every human being that we interact with. And that's
That
why there's spiritual laws.
and you know what? That's the gift that matters.
Yes.
That's the gift because that's number one. That's a gift that has you can't calculate the value of it.
Nope. Nope.
Number two, you can't delegate it.
Nope. Exactly.
you
Yeah.
you got
Got
to
to
do
do
it
it.
yourself, but it's in that doing that this vibration of connection that happens, and that vibration is like priming your pump. To have that type of love, that type of care, and that type of concern. So I salute
You
you, man,
talked about it.
as the
You
greatest
talked about. I think
victory.
it was last week.
Yes,
Frequency and the vibration.
yes,
Talked about that.
yes.
That was very powerful.
Wow. Well, my friend, I tell you, we have enjoyed. This has been like a trip now. Forget memory lane. We went through memory world.
Exactly. Thank you. Same here, my brother.
I sure enjoyed this, and we're gonna share it. And if there are any words you want to leave just before we close out, any final word?
Oh, just if anybody feels that they need help, because this is a time, particularly this last quarter with health insurance, they can reach out to me and just ask me. It doesn't matter because they just need answers. It doesn't matter where they are. So things get a little confusing, and this climate change act or law has impacted the greatest on Medicare and Obamacare. So it's positively.
Yes,
So yeah, just to have some accurate information
yes,
versus trying to figure it out on the internet.
beautiful. Now, is there a website or a contact where people can reach you?
Oh, sure. If
Email
if
or whatever,
Yeah, if
phone
they
number? Yeah.
if you
Uh-huh.
Google Quentin Moses Health Insurance, I'm going to pop up,
Okay.
and my phone number and email, and if you want to make an appointment or just make a phone call or whatever, all of that's right there.
Quentin Moses. All right. Well, thank you, my friend. I truly have enjoyed this, man. And we're
Thank
going to
you.
have some more great times together.
Oh, sounds good. Look forward to seeing you in the ATL soon.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right, Doc. Thanks. Bye bye.